glasses, collared shirt, slightly unkempt hair. Looks like we got a winner on our hands. Hello everyone, today we're looking at nerds. You know what I'm talking about. Some seasons there's a player that was clearly casted to act as the standard nerd of the bunch. Sometimes they have glasses, oftentimes they're a super fan of the show, but there's usually something distinct enough to classify them as the nerd. I'm gonna be going a step past that though, because sometimes it's not so clear cut. Maybe they go for someone a little more geeky. Maybe they go for someone who considers themselves an evil genius as opposed to a good guy nerdy boy. But not like Dr. Will Evil Genius, more like Matt Hoffman. Regardless, I'll be looking into the successes, the failures, and the overall history of the nerd archetype, and co.
I'll go around dancing. I talk to myself.
This reminds me of a story that my dad told me. Oh, you're not listening to me. Okay.
So, when I say nerd archetype, I mean that they were casted with the nerd part of them being their most defining feature initially. You could be the smartest player in the house, by far, but if you've got the body of Cody Calfiore, you're not the nerd archetype. You're the fit guy who happens to be nerdy. The nerd archetype as a whole is dominated by physical features. If you look like a classic smart guy and have some brains to back it up, you better bet Big Brother is branding you with that nerd tag. This is by no means meant to be a diss towards people that are nerds. I'm literally sitting here spending hours making a video about nerds, if that says anything. Nerds are cool. So whenever I'm calling people nerdy or geeky or whatever, it's not ill-advised at all, and I'm sure most of them would agree with me. The thing about early Big Brother is that they really didn't cast archetypes the way that they do today. So, throughout the first 6 or so seasons, we didn't really have anyone that fit the nerd archetype we know so well nowadays. There were intelligent players, of course. Jamie Kern, on the very first season of Big Brother, was extremely smart, graduating first in her class at Washington State University and being accepted into the MBA program at Yale. But she wasn't really the nerd archetype. Fun fact, post-Big Brother, she sold her company to L'Oreal for $1.2 billion. Crazy. Anyways, moving along, in Big Brother 4, we had Jack and G, one being an old retired FBI agent and the other being a young bookkeeper from New York. Both intelligent, but neither were casted as the nerd archetype, as G was casted as June's ex, and in Jack's case, he was more of his own archetype, being the older profiler. In Big Brother 5, we have the very intelligent Nokomis, but she definitely falls more into the category of oddball or outcast. It's definitely worth mentioning that in Big Brother 6, Howie nicknamed the Friendship Alliance as the Nerd Herd. Definitely funny, but nobody in that alliance was on the show to act as the nerd, as that archetype had not been developed or explored at this stage in Big Brother's life. But finally, after over half a decade, we get to the first person I can semi-confidently put into the nerd category. It's Eric Stein from Big Brother 8. Cunning, unassuming, intelligent, and persuasive, Eric had a lot of tools in his kit to use in the game. Unfortunately for him, he was hindered by being America's player, having to do the bidding of the fans throughout the whole season. Because of this, he was destined to inevitably throw his game away through no fault of his own, as America were big fans of the Donatos, Eric's biggest opposition throughout basically the entire season. Eric was a fantastic player, finding ways to work with every house guest, survive a backdoor attempt, the first to ever do so I might add, and never had to rely on competitions to get his way. He was in a prime position to bring himself to the top at the final 7 after he won the veto, with his showmance being the HOH, with a golden opportunity to backdoor Donato. This could have completely changed the course of the endgame, but Eric was unable to use the veto due to being America's player, which unfortunately led to the Donatos winning out from this point and Eric being taken out 2 rounds later in 5th place. Eric's game as a whole remains as one of the biggest what-ifs in the history of the show, and he set up a strong standard for the geeky nerdy archetypes to follow.
I took Contact, Visine, whatever eye solutions there were, sprayed them all in my eyes, got things watering a little bit, got things a little red, and had the sniffling and everything.
Hey, yeah, I hate to do it to you, I want to, get some of this out of my system once and for all.
Eric, I know when something's bothering you.
Yeah, well,
I could tell yesterday you were quiet.
A few seasons later, in Big Brother 10, we have Brian Hart, the first boot of the season, but I don't know if I can put him in as the nerd archetype. He played the evil genius, yes, but I don't know. You'll see throughout this that I'll sometimes have a hard time finding the line between the nerd geeky archetype versus just being intelligent. But now we are here, at the first 100% definitive nerd archetype. It makes sense that they come from Big Brother 11, as they literally had the house guests split into cliques, with one being the Brains. Our first 100% nerd is Ronnie Talbert, a video game obsessed, Star Wars enthusiast, Big Brother superfan. Ronnie had no shame representing the Brain Clique. He played the villain, expressing his disdain for fellow teammate Michelle Noonan. Early on, Ronnie was caught playing both sides of the house during his HOH reign in Week 2, and all hell broke loose with the house versus Ronnie. Mostly Russell, though. It was glorious, and while he had safety that week, it wasn't long before Russell won HOH and sent Ronnie home in a close 4-3 vote just before the jury stage. At the time, he was pretty widely disliked, got caught playing hard at the beginning, and was unfortunately a failure for the nerd archetypes.
Hey Ron, how you doing? How's everything going today? You've been awfully quiet up there.
Been sleeping.
Been sleeping? Tired of scheming? No more schemes? You're supposed to be this mastermind, this really smart guy. How's it feel? You going home? Man, that's gotta suck, but don't worry, I'll be right here when you get out. I'll be right here when you get out. Every day, all day long, that's all he's gonna hear.
His fellow clique members, Shima and Michelle, had an unfortunate experience as well. We all know what happened to Shima. She was royally screwed over the week following Ronnie's eviction, winning the HOH but having that overthrown as Jeff used his coup d'etat to send her ally Jesse home, after which Shima was expelled for throwing her mic in the water and refusing production instruction. Justice for Shima. Michelle was disliked by basically the entire house and got into many arguments with house guests, deemed the season's villain by them, but was able to make it to 4th place, pretty close to the end. The nerd archetypes of Big Brother 11 were all over the place, but unfortunately didn't see the success they had hoped to when entering the house. The following season, we got an evil genius, but one that I feel fits well in the nerdy geeky archetype, and that's Matt Hoffman. The 32-year-old web designer came in with a plan. Garner sympathy with the house by making up a lie that his wife has a rare bone disease in order to help him win. It's devious, and some may find it disturbing, but I think it's amazing. It's taking a Johnny Fairplay and twisting it to work throughout the entire game. Back to Matt, though, he was one of the main contributors towards forming the Brigade Alliance, the most successful alliance of all time up to that point, where Matt was nicknamed the Brains. Matt was a key member of the Brigade in the early game, winning back-to-back HOHs in weeks 3 and 5 respectively. His alliance members got nervous of Matt, though, and were ready to take the shot to get him out. The first time, Matt pulled out the diamond power of veto he got through Pandora's box to save himself, and, pulled the biggest move we've ever seen and got rid of Kathy. But anyways, the next week, he wasn't as lucky and he was evicted. The jury house segments were always tense with Matt, due to the main focus of each being Matt telling a new evicted house guest that he lied about his wife, and then the house guest shaming Matt and making things super uncomfortable. Regardless, Matt was a smart player who became too dangerous in the game, resulting in his alliance turning on him. He did set a new standard for the type of playstyle the nerd archetype was capable of playing, and I'd call it a success, even though he came in 7th place, since the rest of his alliance members placed in 3rd, 2nd, and 1st.
Brugade. Let's just throw it out.
Big up.
Throw it out, dude.
Big up to Maddie right here, yo.
It is so awesome to finally get the brigade together, celebrate our awesome victory, plan my reign of terror to roll through this house. Dude, the brigade train is churning along.
For that, Brendan, I say congratulations. Congratulations on coming so close to achieving your goal. But better luck next time, you big dummy, because I'm going to use the diamond power veto tonight to save myself.
2 seasons later, we get the nerd, the most famous example of the nerd archetype, and I mean that in the best of ways. It's Ian Terry, the winner of Big Brother 14. Coming into the game, Ian was a young superfan who was there to experience everything Big Brother had to offer. After narrowly escaping being evicted in the first week after Mike Boogie granted him safety, Ian began to grow more comfortable in the house. He started gaining trust of some power players, particularly Dan and Brittany, and he made his first big move by playing a huge role in the Mike Boogie eviction right before the jury phase. In a house full of returning legends and physical specimens, you'd think young little Ian would get overshadowed and taken out easily, but he was a fighter. Immediately after getting Boogie out, Ian went on the longest immunity streak of all time. In the US version, thanks Kevin Martin for making me bring up this distinction every time. Ian won the double eviction HOH at the final 9, taking a shot at Frank but instead sending Ashley home. Then saved himself the following week from getting backdoored by winning one of the vetoes. Then won the following HOH at the final 7, successfully taking out Frank this time. Then saved himself the next week during the final 6 double eviction by winning the veto in extreme clutch fashion, before finishing the streak off by winning the final 5 HOH. No player in the US version has had 5 straight weeks of safety like that, even to this day. Ian then got saved by the grace of Dan at the final 4, then followed that up by winning the final HOH, taking Dan to the end, and then beating him in a 6-1 vote to become the winner of Season 14. While Dan was the better player, Ian displayed equal amounts of heart in the game as Dan, and delivered one of the best final jury speeches of all time. It was an incredible journey to watch, as we as an audience got to watch Ian grow and mature inside the house and become more comfortable as both a player and as a person. A real class act and possibly the greatest underdog of all time, Ian became the first player of the nerd archetype to take home the crown. A huge success.
I can kick myself in the face. I had a bad first few days here. I was really nervous. Anything that helps them see the fun side of me definitely helps me stay in this game longer. If anybody in this house takes him to the end, they're a fool. You sit next to him in the final two, he wins 7-0.
Ian is seconds away. Congratulations, Ian. You have won the...
Are you kidding me? Ian just won the veto. I wanted him out. Now I can't get him out.
I did it.
Ian, congratulations. You're the new HOH, buddy.
This is my face to Ian winning.
What? I can't believe I'm still here. I have a 1 in 3 shot at winning Big Brother to win. I can do this.
Congratulations, Ian. You are the winner of Big Brother.
The next season in Big Brother 15, we have two people that I'm maybe counting. Firstly, we have McCrae Olsen, the pizza delivery boy who loves video games and comics. Probably more on the geeky side of things, but McCrae was a force in the Big Brother house, winning the first HOH and veto of the summer, being one half of the dominant power couple of the season with Amanda, and he went on a mini comp streak before his eviction at the Final Four. The other player, who I'm really not sure if they should count or not, is the winner, Andy Herron. Andy was a superfan and very smart, as he was a college professor at the time. He played the best game in the house by far by coming off as super unassuming, but similar to Brian from Big Brother 10, I don't know if I can classify Andy in the realm of the nerd archetype. I'm really conflicted, so I'm going to leave it up to you. If you want to include him on the fringe of this archetype, go for it. That's another success. But if you don't want to include him, that's fine too. I find this line for what classifies a nerd archetype to be such a gray area, and I did not expect it to be this so hard.
I walk into the Big Brother house and I'm completely overwhelmed.
Jeremy?
I give hugs too,
McCrae.
bro. Yeah,
Jeremy. McCrae.
I don't look like these people. I don't really talk like these people.
In Big Brother 16, we have two girls. Firstly, I'll mention Nicole Franzel, who was a self-proclaimed nerdy girl, but I saw somewhere that there was a Hermione Granger archetype that is slightly different from the nerd archetype that I felt fit her better. Regardless, she played okay in Big Brother 16, but it was definitely her weakest game of her 3 showings, and she definitely strayed away from the nerdy girl persona on her later appearances, so I won't count those. The other player from 16 is Christine, who definitely falls into the geeky category and saw slightly more success than Nicole did this season, but was still taken out at 6th place, being the second casualty of the detonators. Middle of the road success for this season.
Christine, we clicked right away. She reminds me of my friends back home. And plus we both have big nerd glasses, so that probably helps too. I'm the one that makes everybody feel better.
Then, season 17 comes along and introduces us to Steve Moses, a young superfan from New York. Right off the bat, the comparisons to Ian were rampant, and everyone was worried about him. He was initially targeted, but Steve did an excellent job of winning safety through vetoes in the Battle of the Block throughout the first few weeks, giving him time to form some bonds with players in the main dynamics, until he was eventually in a semi-comfortable spot. After accidentally winning the first double eviction HOH, Steve took out Jackie, which solidified himself with the Oz twins and Vanessa for the time being, and helped him become the first person to survive the block against Johnny Mac come eviction night. Towards the endgame, Steve turned down the competition jets and won the final 6, final 4, and final 3 HOHs to solidify a spot in the end, where he won convincingly against Liz Nolan in a 6-3 vote. His bonds with players such as Johnny Mac and Vanessa helped him to be saved at the final 5, where he easily could have been evicted, but instead Austin was blindsided. The final 3 HOH showdown between Steve and Vanessa was probably the most intense part 3 of all time, and although I do feel that Vanessa was the best player of the season, Steve had a plan walking into the house and he delivered on it, and I feel that he did deserve that win in the end.
Yes, Becky, I'm aware I'm a super fan. Yes, Becky, I'm aware I'm laying super low. Yes, Becky, I'm aware I have no blood on my hands. This has all been intentional. Thank you for pointing this out, and now that you're advertising you're aware of this, you're my next target.
Correct answer is true. Congratulations, Steve. You are the new head of household.
I didn't want that HOH. But I tried to throw it. I didn't know Jason had a collar. I did not want this head of household.
Steve.
It's okay, Steve. About 50% acting.
A couple weeks ago, I put out a poll to see which winner you wanted me to do another in-depth analysis on, and you guys picked Steve. So in a few weeks, we'll be looking at Steve's game a little bit more in depth. Back to this though, at face value, I see a lot of people compare Steve and Ian's games and come to the conclusion that they played very similarly. They both managed to make their way to the end after being a very early target. They both won 4 HOHs and 2 vetoes, and of course, they're both the nerdy archetypes of their season. I personally feel their games were quite different though, as I think Steve had a better grasp of the strategic game and was more aware of what was happening around him, while Ian was able to rely on his competition prowess more to advance himself through the game. Nothing wrong with that though. A win is a win, and I just think that they played different games, and people tend to group them together as similar players, so I just wanted to say that. Anyways, it was at this time that players definitely got wary of the nerds, seeing as to how Ian and Steve, the two most stereotypical nerd archetypes in the show's history, had both gone on to win within the past 4 seasons. Because of that, we haven't seen nerds be nearly as successful as they have in the past. Big Brother 18 is a weird one. We have Bronte, we have Bridget, and we have Michelle. I am actually at a loss for what to think because I straight up don't know where to put them. They all had varying levels of success at times, but none of them made it too far in the game. In Big Brother 19, we're introduced to Cameron, who unfortunately just didn't stand a chance. After Ian and Steve's success, everyone was on the lookout for the nerds, and Cameron was swiftly evicted on the first night after failing to win safety. Megan was definitely a bit geeky as well, but after a rough few days in the house, she decided to walk from the show. Lastly, we have Ramses, the self-proclaimed nerd who somehow saw the most success of the 3 house guests I'm talking about for this season, even though he was evicted pre-jury. He had a tough time ever finding his footing as he got cursed in the first week and had to go up on the block, and his behavior while on the block hindered some of the trust building that is pretty necessary in order to go far in the game and was taken out just a couple weeks later. Alright, we're almost to the end. In Big Brother 20, we got Scotty, who proved to be more of an athletic nerd than we really have seen before. He won all the power in week 3 and took out half of the bros duo, but Scotty constantly found himself on the bottom of his Faute alliance until his fellow ally Fessy took him out after a mixture of being bamboozled by JC and not liking the fact that Scotty was into Haley. Scotty won the battle back a week later, but was unable to make anything of worth happen during his newly bought time and was quickly sent right out the door again. Nicole Anthony in Big Brother 21 falls into an interesting category, where right off the bat, she gives off female nerd archetype vibes, but was definitely more of a lovable oddball in my opinion. After being ostracized in the pre-jury phase, Nicole was able to work her way into a good spot and made it all the way to 3rd place, and even took home America's favorite house guest, the only nerd to hold this distinction.
Congratulations, Nicole! You're going home with $25,000!
And now we're at the current season, Big Brother 23. While some players can be sorta nerdy, like Claire, the geeky spot has to go to Sarah Beth. A cosplayer at heart, Sarah Beth started off the game in a really good spot, forming a final 2 deal with Kyland and finding herself in a powerful group of 8 with the Kings and Queens plus Derek X. But in the past couple of weeks, it became apparent to her that her endearing, adorable voice was not being heard in her alliance, and she quickly became a house target. Whether or not she can recover from this, I'm not sure, but it's not looking too great for her right now. Maybe she'll pull out a Hail Mary and make her way to the end, but we'll just have to wait and see.
Row, row, row your boat gently down the stream. When the veto earn your safety and betray your team.
And there we go. Although some players casted as the nerd have had trouble finding their footing, we've seen multiple players maneuver their way through the game and find success. We've had some great game players and characters like Eric Stein and Matt Hoffman. We've seen players make it so close to the end like Nicole Anthony, and we've even seen 2 nerds be crowned the winner with Ian and Steve. As Big Brother acts as a microcosm of society as a whole, it's incredibly interesting to watch how the nerdy players perform in the show. Sometimes the nerds fall into an outsider role and struggle to form relationships, just like it's high school. Sometimes, though, they find themselves in the power structure of the house, and even more rarely, they can really take advantage of playing the stereotypical nerd role and maneuver their way through the game unassumingly and end up taking the whole thing. There will always be people who have their qualms with Ian and Steve winning. Those that say Dan should have won, and those that say Vanessa got robbed. But I think that for the show, it's extremely important to have them as representatives, as winners. It's a constant reminder that no matter who you are, no matter what you represent, anyone can win this game. Thank you all for watching this video up to this point. If you enjoyed, definitely consider subscribing, as I'm chugging out these videos every week. So make sure that you're here Mondays around 12:30 Eastern time for a new video. And as always, here's a clip for you on your way out.
Can I do something to people at the start of this game?
It's not usual. People in this game get in their cliques, and they stick in their cliques just like in life.
That's why I wanted to win this show, because that's how I've always been labeled my whole life. It's like this weirdo and nobody ever wants to hang out with. And that's still the case even like today.
Why